Joining me on the podcast today, Mr. Blake Bauman from Milltown Cabinets in beautiful Washington Parish. Mr. Blake, thank you so much for coming today and visiting with me.
Thank you for having me.
Right on, man. Tell me a little bit about Milltown Cabinets and give me a brief overview of what you do so the audience can know a little bit more.
So we're in our 42nd year of business here. My dad started it 2 years before I was born. And so I always jokingly but seriously say I've done it my whole life because, I mean, I have literally done it my whole life. And that starts with, you know, whenever I got in trouble at school and I had to, and I got punished and stuff, I had to go sweep the floors or I had to go empty boxes and all that stuff like that. And so, like, yeah, I mean, it kind of started that way. And then fast forward 42 years later, it's where it's at now. And so, I mean, we install pretty much at least a job a day or so, or at least about 4 a week. You know, so I mean, it went from my dad starting it in his carport 42 years ago to now we're 30 some odd thousand square feet, several outbuildings and all that. And
I've been to your facility. It's impressive. You have a wonderful setup there. There's a lot. I think a lot of companies, it takes a long time to figure out where things need to be. I know I certainly have experienced this in my jewelry work. I set things up, you know, and then I work them for a minute. I go, you know what, this machine needs to be over here. Mm-hmm. And then you move one little thing, and then you move one little thing, or you add a table, or you do all these things. And you know, after 40 years of shuffling stuff around, you know, you end up with this really nice flow of how things are supposed to.
Well, and we're still steadily evolving as far as where machines go. And I'll have a guy that finds himself always, you know, going from this side of the shop to that side of the shop to get to like a radio alarm saw. And so he may be going, you know, 100 feet to get to a saw that he uses multiple times a day. And it's like, okay, well, let's get him another saw and put it close by his station. It don't have to be a big saw, but just a smaller saw. And it's just easy to expand and all that when it comes to little small things. But that 100-foot trek numerous times a day and all that stuff ends up being hours lost and all. And so it is steadily evolving, which is good that we have the space to do it. But big stuff pretty much stays, but we're always kind of moving around little things and just trying to fine tune stuff because like those saved minutes add up.
When you got a bunch of guys doing work all day long, it does. You know, some of the equipment that you have, I'm a tool guy, so I love talking about equipment. The router table that you use to cut your plywood. Router. Oh man, that thing's awesome.
Yeah, that's and our newer one it's like 4 years old or so. That man, it's so fast and it's just unreal and the precision of it and all that stuff. It pops up errors if it gets off, and like the error is like it's off like 1,000th, and it's like there's nobody's going to measure that ever, but it thinks it's off, and it's just like the precision is crazy, and just the speed and all. It's like when you load a sheet and it cuts out all these parts, and then you're on the outfeed end and you're stacking up the parts and all that stuff. By the time you're through grabbing those outfeed parts, you're ready to load another sheet, and it's just working circles and all that stuff, and it is just unreal, the speed and precision and precision and accuracy is the same thing, I would guess, but just the sheer speed of it is mind blowing and all. And it's definitely a kick in the pants if it goes down for any kind of reason. And it's like, all right, everybody stop everything, let's get this machine fixed and all. And it's like all hands on deck, you know.
And you're the chief debugger whenever something goes wrong in the shop. Yeah, I've seen you jump in there.
Yeah, well, which is good. I'm not afraid to jump in there. It's kind of like you'll just dive into a car and say, well, I know it should do this, and it's not, and you'll just jump into it. And I'm the same way. I mean, I just grew up kind of just not afraid to just jump into something.
My philosophy is go until you realize you're out of your depth. I go into something, whether it's fixing a piece of equipment or one of my vehicles or whatever it is. I'll scratch and scratch and scratch, and then I go, I'm going to contact a professional now. And then I can tell
Google or a YouTube mechanic.
Once that runs out, then I've got to call a professional.
Yeah, I'm a certified YouTube mechanic for sure.
No doubt, myself as well. Manufacturing is difficult too. Whenever few years ago when Trump was running for election, he was talking about bringing all the manufacturing back to U.S., which I think is a very good idea, as much as possible. But the first thing that popped into my mind was like, who's going to work all those jobs? You know, because we have taken the focus from skilled labor. We've taken the focus from artisan craft. We've taken that focus and sort of made it like it's like a second or third string option. You know, it has been for a while, but I think, I remember, and I'm sure you've seen the Dirty Jobs.
Of course,
Dirty Jobs
was one of the best shows ever.
One of the best shows ever made. I agree completely.
I mean, and I like watching those shows too, just to learn stuff. And it's just fascinating seeing what it's like. Oh, it's just whatever. It's a paper factory, and they just make boxes or something, and all that. But still, all the little things that go into place to do it that so many people don't realize is like, oh, there's 50 people in this one factory that makes toilet paper, and it's like, well, it's just toilet paper. But there's all these people involved in all these machines and all these things to make a roll of toilet paper.
When they stop making it, you got a problem.
Yeah. And so, I mean, I always really enjoyed the show. I always thought is like, well, how can I get him to come to my cabinet shop? It's like, is that dirty enough?
Yeah.
And
well,
so, I was always like thinking at it from that aspect too. And I'm like, if he was involved whenever we were staining cabinets, that's a dirty job. Or having to do the cleanup days and all that stuff like that. But I was like,
I think that's part. I think that was part of the attraction to the show, because I think a lot of people who have companies and they have facilities where they do things. I think a lot of people, it's like when you watch a game show, you're like, oh, I bet I could win. I think a lot of people who watch that show said, I do something like that. And, Mike Rowe, unwittingly, I think, stumbled into this, he became a figure. He became a champion of the working man and the skilled laborer. Like what we're doing here today. I think of this as, this is modern day reality TV. Like I remember the birth of reality TV, and it went from being kind of interesting and funny, and then it got stupid,
scripted, and all that stuff.
They ruined it. I remember when what is it, the Swamp People?
Oh,
when that
first
came
couple
out,
seasons were good.
It was awesome,
and then it dive bombed.
My father had a seafood market, and he knew Bubba Landry and Troy Landry, and knew all those people. And I remember the first episode when I saw Troy. First thing I remember thinking was, a star is born. And the other thing was Troy was not playing a character. That was him. It was him being himself. He was an outlandish, very, very enthusiastic person, and he loved what he did, and he loved exploring his heritage of his family's involvement in the outdoors. And look, they don't have to go out and catch gators. They do that because they enjoy it, and it's something that is like, it's a family thing for them. But I remember seeing that and thinking, golly, that's so cool that somebody grabbed onto that. But then, of course, like all reality shows,
if you start selling merch, it's going downhill
when the money,
from there.
Yeah, when the money shows up. I remember when the show first came on, I saw Troy and I was like, bravo, great job. I called his brother, Bubba, and I said, Bubba, listen, does Troy have an agent? He goes, no, buddy, he don't want to do none of that. I said, well, he's going to need to, because things are going to start happening. And so a few, might have been 6 months later, I bumped into him someplace, and I was like, man, I said, did Troy ever, get lined up with an agent? He said, OT, buddy, he got 2. He's on it.
I got 2.
He got 2. But I think, what got us on this topic was that I think a lot of people are refreshed by the idea that people are out there working and doing things and making things, and it's very interesting. And so that's a big part of what I'm trying to do here. I'm trying to put a little truth out there into the world, and maybe set an example for a younger person who's trying to get the courage to start his own company or her own company to say, because it's very difficult to start, from scratch, or even in your situation, you guys had a thing going, and then it was time for you to pass the torch and say, what can I do with this, And if you just grab a hold of something and keep rowing the boat the way you've always done it, it's going to go down. You have to.
Oh, it's a steadily evolving business and all that stuff. And like just with the clientele and what people want, styles, designs. I mean, like the rings you used to make in the early 2000s aren't the rings you make today and all that stuff. In fact, you just took my wife's engagement ring and separated it out into earrings and a necklace and all that stuff. Because, I mean, just that style has changed and all that. And she wears it every day now and stuff and all. And she loves it. And it's fantastic job you did on it, by the way.
Thank you very much.
And so, and it was just... and just like how we made how we make them's the same, but the styling of cabinets and all, like in the 2000s, ornate stuff, trim everywhere and all that. And now everything's just how simple and plain can you make them. And we're even doing a lot of just slab front doors and stuff with like zero profiles, and just everything is just, it's just always changing, and you have to roll with what folks want. Occasionally we still have folks that come in and want every stick of trim we have available put in every area and all that stuff, and these over-the-top mantles and hoods and stuff. And the house next door is this super sleek modern house that has zero trim, zero profiles, and it's just a very sleek front thing. But it's just, it's a type of their personality and all that stuff. And everybody knows I'm spending all this money. I want my house to be me, an extension of me, which makes us have to stay on our toes, watch whenever they show us photos and all that stuff. Even though they're talking about a color, I'll quickly look at that photo and I'll say like, all right, look, it's got this type door and this type trim. And I have to kind of like take in that whole photo, because they're showing you a color, but they're kind of subconsciously seeing the whole thing. And then if they show 3 or 4, I'm like, okay, well, what do these 3 or 4 photos all have in column or in common? Most of the time it's the same photo 4 different times from a different angle or something. And so, but sometimes this one will be an inset cabinet, that's painted. This one will be a stained cabinet that's overlay, and it's like, so what do they want? And so then that's where it gets to be the challenge of like trying to take everything and make what they want and all that. Which that's one of the fun parts of my job, is meeting face to face with folks, hashing out what they want, and just trying to pull the information, because sometimes they come in and they don't know what they want. And so hopefully they have some photos or some inspiration, or we did a friend of theirs and they're like, hey, I like how you did my buddy's place and all that. Then we can go pull the file and try to get some place to start.
Primarily you're working with builders who are you're their preferred cabinet guy.
A lot of times our schedule, being our backlog and all that, it just doesn't accommodate folks. And so with getting our schedule situated and all that stuff, it's really it's got it where I have lost a lot of jobs in the past couple years since we've really got our schedule dialed in. But I've lost them on good terms, because somebody will call me and the house is roughed in, it's wired and plumbed, sheetrock's on site, and they call us and they're like, okay, they're insulating and hanging sheetrock next week. And it's like, well, we're 16 weeks out. And I can just say it up front. And they're like, oh, well, that ain't going to work for us. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, it was lost on good terms, instead of me turning into a salesman and like, yeah.
Oh, that's the worst.
And then it's like, oh yeah, by the way, after I've got a deposit check and all that stuff, oh, I'm 16 weeks out. And they're like, what? And so that's kind of one of the earlier things we just say up front when somebody calls, and just say like, okay, well, what's the status of your house? And they're like, oh, we're still planning. Great. Or we're just doing the dirt work, or they just poured the slab yesterday. Oh, okay, we're still good. But if it gets to where they're in the house doing rough ends and stuff, unless it's just a really large house, that's going to be a drawn out process. But most houses, they're still getting built, relatively quick if it's a normal size house and all that stuff. The larger ones still take time, naturally, because it's just a lot of house. But yeah, it definitely, our schedule, we've lost jobs on good terms, I would say. But that's one of the things that's really helped us stay organized is our little dry erase board with the magnets and all that stuff like that. And every day you're a phone call away from having to shimmy around every single thing up there and all that stuff. And it's like, oh boy.
I know. I've had to do that in the last few years. There's a lot. If you drive around looking around, there's a lot of AC guys. There's a lot of electricians. There's a lot of plumbers. You know, but there are some of the trades that seem to be there's not a lot of people onboarding. You know, I renovated my showroom a couple of years ago, and I wanted an elaborate door, and there are only a handful of people in our region that are building, you know, custom, really nice, you know, artisan level, you know, doors and things like that.
Not an off the shelf door that
I couldn't,
everybody else
I couldn't do it. I went and looked, and I was like, okay, none of these are for me. And so what I had in my mind was this beautiful elaborate door, and I said, oh Lord, I'm gonna have to build this
Gotta
thing.
make it myself.
Well, because it was impossible for me to hire somebody. I did find one guy who was doing it. He was in the Baton Rouge area, and he was like,
a lot of door. Well, from what I've heard, there's several door manufacturers in Baton Rouge area.
yeah, but this guy was a year out. He, you know, and I was like,
There you
well,
go.
that's not going to work either for me.
Yeah.
And so I ended up, you know, I enjoy a little woodworking, and which lends itself to why I have so much interest in what you do. I like, you know, but I'm a maker of things. I like working in wood. I like working in metal. I really get a kick out of all this stuff. We had a fantastic knife maker on last week, and we talked about, you know, metallurgy and you know, the processes of how you go from one state to the next, and you know, it's all sort of the same stuff. It's just different.
I think the
materials.
blacksmithing stuff's kind of making a little resurgence here and all that with the Forged in Fire TV show and all
Sure.
that stuff like that, of which I enjoyed watching it and all that stuff. It's just the same story with the how it's made and the dirty jobs. I always enjoyed those shows and all that stuff.
Mike Rowe is an eloquent guy.
Oh yeah,
he's very well read. I
Very
believe
deep and soothing.
Well, I
voice.
believe he studied literature in school.
Yeah, I think he was like an opera singer or something in just like us.
Yeah, just like you and I. No, I think he did some theater work as well.
Yeah, something like that,
But
yeah.
but I think he studied literature in school, and so if you listen to him speak, he'll make a lot of these, you know, pretty
He
high
uses big
level
words.
He uses some
Yeah.
high level references sometimes, and so I think that was, you know, all part of the allure of that show. You know, it's a funny thing, you know, whenever you are tasked with making something that doesn't exist. You know, I've had my shop for 20 years here where it is. And before that, I was working out of a small office that I was renting, you know, for a few years, and then I worked in a few places around the country. And you know, I'm used to explaining myself to people, and because I have to, it's part of what I do. And you know, you're never too big to have to explain what you do, because when somebody's contemplating spending serious money on something that exists in their imagination in a very, very intangible way, you know, when people come into the jewelry shop and they're like, I like this and I like this and I like this, and they pull out pictures and they've got, you know, pieces of magazine torn out, and they've got pictures in their phone, and we're looking on the Instagram and Facebook and all that stuff. And I go, okay, listen, you're in what I call the tornado of possibility. And they go,
That's a good one.
They go,
Yeah.
That is how I feel.
That is me. You
That's
just
me.
described me.
You nailed me. I'm like, all right, good. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna shake this thing down to the foundation, and we're gonna start there. You know, and I think that's
So
what
it's
you were
a ring,
describing.
so it's round. so let's start with round.
I start with the bones. I go, okay, listen, let's check a few of the things off the list that we know for sure. What material do you want? You know, if you don't know, it's all right. We'll put a question mark by that one and move on. You know,
Well, I see the similar thing whenever folks are coming to our shop to pick out doors, and they'll look at all these doors and they're like, "Oh, I don't know." And I was like, "Okay, a lot of times it's easier to to rule out some. And it's like, okay, well, if you don't know what you like, you know what you don't
Tell
like.
me what you don't like.
And so let's cull these and let's cull these. And before you know it, you're down to like 2 or 3. And it's like, well, now we've really simplified this and all. And
Sure.
so a lot of times it is either just rule out as opposed to pick something, which in turn is doing the same thing.
Yep, you're just getting there by removing the things you're not going to
Yeah.
use, and I use that technique a lot, and I enjoy. I'm not put out by that process. I enjoy it because in that process, I use that as an opportunity to get to know people a little bit better, and I want to earn their business and earn their trust, and I want to be their guy. You know?
I really think customers appreciate the fact that you do spend one-on-one time, knowing that there's probably 2 other people in the showroom that still need one-on-one time too, but you're talking to them about their project, and to them, this is the most important project that's ever occurred in their life. And so, and a lot of times it is. And so they want to feel that one-on-one connection and all that. And the only way to do that is have the face-to-face conversations, to show the pictures, to point and to look and to just do all these things and all that. And I really, really think a lot of folks appreciate that, even though it's the day and day thing for you. To them, somebody feels very, very special, if you will, knowing that this craftsman is talking to me about what I want on this project.
I think it's very similar to what you were talking about with the scheduling. If I can't do it, then I can't do it on good terms. I don't want to let people down or burn somebody, because you'll never see them again. They'll never give you another chance if you blow it, and rightfully so, because people blow it all the time. I know in the building industry, I've hired a lot of people to come and do things for me, and they either no showed on me at the last minute, or they showed up and it didn't go good, and they had
I
to be
hear
asked
horror
to
stories
leave.
all the time from all my customers, because it always ends up trickling down to me. If this guy didn't show up and then that guy didn't show up, it ends up rippling to me. And then for us, if we had it scheduled for Tuesday and Wednesday and they call Monday afternoon when I'm loading the cabinets on the trailer, it's like, oh, I can't take it tomorrow and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, so I'm trying to think like, okay, well, what can we do tomorrow? When can we work this back in next week? Because we're already full next week. And so then it's like, oh man, and it's just, that's where the schedule is like, we have a love-hate relationship with our schedule, and it all just depends on what that phone call is, you know, dictating whether that's going to be a love or a hate day with the schedule and all that. But nevertheless, it keeps us organized though too, because we need to know what job we need to devote the time into. Because if you're 2 weeks out or whatever, then I'm pouring in time to your job because it's cut list time, and we're really, you know, getting all these fine details with. So that's where there's not enough of us to go around sometimes and all that stuff, because then you steadily have the quotes coming in you have to turn around, and the draft drawings you have to turn around, the updated drawings, and then ultimately final drawings leading into cut list to fabrication to go to the shop. And so I'm always getting pulled numerous ways, but that's perks of the job, right?
Yeah, it's part of it. You know, you have to get better at that. It's your responsibility to get better at that. We don't. I wish there was like, there is no software. It does, for what I do. It doesn't really exist. I can track jobs within the system. You know, I can go and I can look, but as far as keeping things moving from one step to the next, I'm like you. I'm with the dry erase board. It's about the only thing that I can physically look at in my office and go, okay, I got this, and this, and then I can also show that.
Then
to
everybody
clients.
else can look at it too, though. And so if you have some of your guys working on things, then they can come up there and say like, oh, okay, well, I need to work on this. And so if you're going or on the phone or whatever, it kind of keeps everybody on the same page because everybody's looking at the same schedule. And so you don't have to answer every question because it's on the dry erase board, the old fail-safe dry erase board.
I show it to clients all the time. They'll say, well, I need this by then. I go, okay, here's a little problem. You see that board right? You see that board right there?
Yep. Yeah.
See all those people on that board?
Yeah. Yeah. I've done it a few times too, just like showing just the sheer magnitude. And it's funny, whenever we started our schedule, I think we went out like 8 or 10 weeks. It's a 3x4 foot dry erase board, I think, and we got pinstripe tape, and we like made calendars and all that stuff, and we put on Amazon, just got these little magnets that's dry erase, and we'll put your name on there, we'll Aaron or Captain Bosker, whatever, and all that stuff, and we'll put it at the bottom. Then next week everybody shifts up. The next week everybody shifts up. So, but it started like 8 or 10 weeks, and at the bottom we had like punch outs and service calls and stuff like that. And then it grew a little bit further. Then it grew a little bit further and grew further and all that. Now it goes down to 16 weeks, and it's like, and there's names all the way at the bottom.
I like
And-
the idea of the magnets. We've been writing, and every now and then we'll go back and we'll say, okay, we need to move this up, and we'll erase and we'll reestablish whatever.
Magnets.
I
man.
like the idea of the
Yeah.
magnets. I've been doing this for a little while, but I still feel like the new kid, on the block, and I imagine you probably feel that way sometimes, even though you're operating on a pretty high level and you have a lot going on. But
Well, I've got like great ideas from customers before and stuff like that. We're just in a meeting and we're just hashing things out, and we come up with this little area, and then like I'll have a customer just kind of spits out this awesome idea, and I'm like, if we were keeping score, you would have got the point on that one and stuff. And that's kind of like one of my little things and all that. I mean, but I've got some really good ideas with just how things going and all that stuff. And then I'll actually go to some houses where some folks have lived in there for 30 years and they're wanting to do a remodel in their kitchen. But they've lived there for all this time. And so it's hard for them to visualize the refrigerator being on this wall. Because the refrigerator's on this wall, so that's where it goes. And then I'll go in there and say, well, let's put the refrigerator here. And they're like, what? That just blew their mind and stuff like that. And I was like, well, that was just kind of obvious to me, but I just set foot in this place. You've got 30 years of the refrigerator being there. And so it's hard for you to see past that. And that's with a lot of my jobs and stuff like that, is that, I mean, I'm always open to input. I'm not the smartest guy in the room and all that stuff. I don't know. I could be today, but I mean, most times I'm not the smartest guy in the room and all that. And so it's just kind of, it's just knowing that you don't have to be the source of ideas all the time.
Yeah.
And that somebody could just spitball this brilliant idea that fixes all the problems and all that stuff. And I mean, I always try to stay open to ideas. And I've had employees that whenever we're working on stuff and then I'll have this great idea that I came up with of how we're going to fabricate this thing. And I bring it out there to my guys, and they're like, well, why don't we just do this? And I'm like, well, that's a good idea. Let's just do that. And so it's just like, sometimes like there's good ways to do it, or there's more than one way to do it. And the third or fourth way could be the better way in this application. Tomorrow, it may not be the better way in this application and stuff, because, circumstances can change and all that. But I'm always open to ideas on stuff.
I think that comes with experience and maturity. Being able to put your ego aside. You are the expert, but say, you know what? Let me listen. Let me listen and hear what they have to say. And I try to do that.
That's
when
a
I'm
hard thing to do.
Yeah,
is
sure. It takes time.
Listen to somebody else's input and stuff, because you're like, look, I'm the cabinet guy here. I'm the idea man here and all that stuff. But then sometimes you don't ever know where this brilliant idea may come from.
Well, I want people to be happy. That's my thing. I've always sort of approached it from that standpoint. If you're always thinking money. Of course, money's important. You have to keep the company healthy. You have to look out for your company, but you have to also look out for the clients as well, because without them, if you start losing clients, or if you make bad decisions that don't produce any fruit, well then what have you done? And so for me, it's like fishing. There's a lot of downtime in fishing, but if you're patient and you're listening, you'll pick up the one little thing that you need, and then now not only that, but now your client is more motivated to keep moving forward with the project, because now they're vested. Now they've got some skin in the game, and then it becomes real to them at that time, because now this idea they had is suddenly implemented into what the finished product's going to be, and so I get a kick out of it.
They have pride in knowing it's like, that was my idea. Not that we're keeping score.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
again, they got the point that time though and stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, I tell people all the time. People will say, well, Aaron did this, Aaron did that. And I go, wait a minute now. I can't take all the credit.
Collectively did this. Yeah.
I couldn't have done. I still tell people, I said, listen, I couldn't have done it without you.
Exactly. Wouldn't have even existed.
That's right.
Yeah.
This would all just be talk if it hadn't been for you. So, I'm interested, again, let's circle back to the scope of some of the jobs that you do. Tell me about some of, some of the elaborate, types of jobs that you've done. I imagine a good bit of them when you're working for contractors. I imagine a lot of these contractors, they have a type of home that they like to build that they're skilled at, and it appeals to a certain client base. But every now and then you get a big fish on, and it's a big job, and you're like, all right, we're really going to have to stretch our wings a little bit and try to keep this thing on track and not let it disrupt all of our production for everything else.
Well, and that's where it gets into splitting it up into like smaller sections, smaller manageable sections and all that stuff. Now, if there's a cabinet job that's just got, hundreds of cabinets, most of the time it's the same as the one that's got 30 cabinets. There's just more of them. And so now it could be a really small job that has some really intricate pieces and stuff. Like a cool thing now is everybody likes doing a pantry that you open the door and you walk through what looks like a pantry cabinet, but you open it up and you walk into an actual built-in pantry. We've done numerous ones of those, and like those can kind of get intricate with laying it out with the framing. It goes all the way back into the framing stage where I have to get involved early, know that's the end goal. And so a lot of times the size really doesn't affect us. It's the intricacy of some of the things and all that, which is most likely similar to yours. It don't matter if it's a 50 carat stone, you still got to make the structure that holds the thing in there.
It has to be scaled.
And make sure it's the same thing. It's just bigger. And so that's similar with us. It's the same thing. There's just more of them. It's the intricacy of how we have to go about doing these really small things. And so I've had really small jobs eat our lunch when it comes to things, because on the install end, if it's a remodel, even if it's a new house and stuff like that, sometimes the walls are out of whack and things aren't level. And a job that we had planned to just take half a day, it takes 3 days installing, because like it's just so out of whack. And we have to come back and like remake trim to cover wider gaps, or remake cabinets just because it was so out of whack. And we just measured perimeter walls, didn't check for squareness because you just assume it's square or square enough, and then have to like literally remake cabinets because the walls are so bad, and you have to make it smaller because when it went into walls that's like that, it wouldn't fit. So you have to make it smaller to fit, and then do all kind of ugly things with trim to cover up all the ugliness and all. But those are surprises that just kind of catch you. But the large jobs, like large jobs don't scare me or anything like that. It's just more of them.
I mean, I guess what I'm interested in is like you do some of these like Hollywood closets, where they have just these shoe racks and all this kind of wild stuff. Do you do a lot of that?
Well, we don't do a lot of closets. Some of the closets we do are really detailed closets and stuff, but we just handle it just like it's a powder bathroom vanity and all that stuff like that. Is we just talk to them and say like, okay, when it comes to closets, we'll kind of talk lineal footage of like, all right, how much shoe shelf space do you need? How much, long hanging do you need? Do you want drawers? How many drawers? And so it's the exact same way we handle kitchens and bathrooms and all that. It's just with a closet twist, but we kind of talk like footages and all that stuff. It's like, all right, do you need 5 feet of long hanging for dresses, or you not have any dresses and you just want just like a little 2 foot space for just in case and all that stuff? And every single one is different too, especially when it comes to closets. Like they are vastly different from job to job. It's really common for us to just make little islands in closets and stuff, because closets is kind of its own thing. And a lot of those closet manufacturers around here are a whole lot more streamlined in closets and all that stuff. But I have done a lot. Most of the closets we do are full depth cabinets, and they actually put doors on them. And so when you actually walk into the closet, it just looks just like cabinets in there.
It's pretty clean.
And you open up the doors and then you see the clothing in there and all that stuff like that. But it's really common for us to do makeup vanities and closets and islands and all those things. But it's just like bathrooms and kitchens and all that. It's just one-on-one conversations with the customer and just see what they actually want in their application. And so there's really no rule of thumb when it comes to closets. Kitchens are actually it's kind of everybody's got the same appliances. It's just what size are the appliances and where they're going to go. But when it comes to closets, they vary vastly from one to one, because everybody's different on what they have.
I know a lot of this stuff these days has like really trick lighting. You know, that's the new thing with the lighting. LED technology has come so far. Do you guys install that stuff?
We
or do
actually
you
try to
like-
stay in our lane when it comes to lighting and all that stuff. And like every customer that comes through asks if we do countertops, if we do the under cabinet lighting and all that stuff. And it's just, we just stay in our lane of cabinets. Now, I've communicated with probably every electrician around, with every countertop company around, and I'll weigh in thoughts or answer questions and all that stuff, because everybody has questions a lot of times. And so, but it's sort of like lighting is its own thing and all that stuff. And because it's just like, what's the last construction thing you bought, like a sink or an appliance or something like that? When you start shopping for a sink, you don't realize how many sinks are out there till you start shopping for sinks. And it's like, why is there so many sinks? You know, or stoves or refrigerators and all that stuff. And the price varies accordingly. And it's just, it's unreal how deep things get until you start digging. It's like, man, there ain't no bottom to this hole. And it's like, it's just, you're in the hole of under cabinet lighting. And it's like, and you have the color temperatures, of course, you're dealing with here with lighting and all that stuff. And the color temperature of lights changes everything. And so it's just it's its own thing.
Yeah, I'm seeing lighting people more often than not now. Like I've seen around town, there's a couple of trucks, you know, going around, service trucks, and it says lighting. I'm like, wait, they just do lights?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You know, that there's that much of a draw for it. But then you think about it, it's so popular. Anytime you see a really, you know, beautiful kitchen or a beautiful, master closet or something like that, there's always lighting integrated some way or another.
Lighting is a fascinating thing, and it can make or break anything and all. If you have like the nicest cabinets, but it's in a little dark corner, I mean, then nobody will see it. And so if you have like glass front cabinets and they're lit on the inside, if you have up lighting or down lighting on the cabinets and all that stuff, there's so many aspects that lighting can do and greatly affect the end look of stuff, you know. And I'll always try to send home samples of colors and all that stuff, because they're seeing it in our showroom that just kind of has office lighting. It's not like a residential type lighting. And so I'll say, just bring this home and put it in your house and just like bring it around and just see how this color changes and stuff. Oh, the color ain't gonna change. I was like, well, yes, it will too. And so like when you see the end color of like based off your lighting, it can change all over the place, especially if you have a color that's leaning kind of warm and you put warm lights in there, those cabinets will be yellow real quick. And so like folks don't give light the attention it needs. Sometimes it needs a lot of attention when it comes to how the end product will look. Lighting is a fascinating animal. It's crazy.
It takes a lot of experience, I think, for people, for clients. You know, everybody doesn't start out building their dream home. You know, everybody doesn't start out in my industry. Everybody doesn't start out building the ring or the necklace or the bracelet of a lifetime. You know, it's a graduation. This is a grown folks business. This is not for children. You know, and so I think there's a big learning curve for the end user, for the client. They have to kind of be ready to take on the challenge of, okay, well, you're going to have to decide. You know, this is a big deal, you know. And so when you have people who are more savvy, you know, I really enjoy working with people like that who have bought a lot of these kind of things before, you know. And I don't mind first timers. I like them. But it's a different client completely, because when you have somebody who's never done something before, or you have someone who's very knowledgeable, the more knowledgeable ones sometimes may overplay their hands a little bit and think they have a better handle on something than they really do. And you have to take a little time and go, okay, listen, well, you know, it's going to come down to this, and this. I'd advise you to spend some time looking at this, you know. And it's funny because something that I've noticed, you know, when you're working with people, there's a lot of crossover. You know, it doesn't matter what industry you're in. You know, you're having to constantly, you know, it's your job to make sure that people are hearing the information. You know, something that I'll do is I'll put the brakes pretty quick and circle back. You know, if I'm talking to somebody and they're saying yeah when they mean I don't know, I kind of pride myself in recognizing that, going, okay, so let's talk about this again. And I'll bring back, because in the end it serves me and it serves them better because ultimately my goal is for them to be happy. I mean, I want to get paid.
Well, it's got your name on it, and so at the end of the day, if they're showing off a ring to their friend, you want them to be the super satisfied and say, Aaron made this like based off our conversation. And so that's what I always say. These are my cabinets. I'm just putting them in your house. And so a lot of times I'll stop short of making a recommendation because somebody will say, what do you think? And my kind of go-to thing is that if I don't think you're making a bad decision, then we'll just keep going. But if I'm making recommendations, a lot of times I'm like, well, hey, have you saw this? Have you saw this and all that stuff? And then that's kind of my way of saying I don't like this 100%. So let me just kind of show you these things that I think look good. But then if it ultimately ends up there, that's what they wanted. And so I've kind of showed them a few things that I might think is better, but at the end of the day, it's their house.
If you're interested, if you know somebody who's interested in one of these fields, send them my way. You know, if you've ever wanted to learn about jewelry making, come and see me. If I can't offer you something personally, I can point you in the right direction. If you're interested in woodworking, you know, Milltown cabinets, I guarantee you Blake Ballman knows more about that than anybody will come across. I guarantee you, if he don't hire you, he'll point you in the right direction.
There you go.
Yeah,
there you go.
It's, you know, look, I mean, everybody needs to be doing this. If we were all doing this to some degree, I ain't trying to save the world, but I would like to improve it a little bit. I sure
Leave
would.
it better than you found it.
That's right. Listen, Mr. Blake, thank you so much for coming. It's been an absolute pleasure, as always, visiting with you. I know you and I could sit around and chat for days, but thank you for taking time out of your busy day to come and see me.
Not a problem. I enjoyed it myself.
Hope to see you again soon. Thank you.
Me too, man. We'll see you soon.
Right on.